Welcome back to a new look of the Goonery podcast. With me, as usual, is Brandon Colley Beans. We have a couple new faces. We have Jacob Stevenson and Seth Fuller. If you guys want to introduce yourselves to our fans real quick.
Yeah, I'll go first real quick. That way we're not like cutting each other off. My name's Seth. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I pretty much lived here my entire life. Spent 6 years in the Air Force, so kind of floated around the U.S. Never really been anywhere else overseas. Just graduated from Ohio State. Now I go to UC for sport administration for my master's, and huge Colts fan and huge OSU fan, as you guys can see. And I'm wearing the Tiger clown for the first podcast.
I'm Jacob Stevenson. I live in the Seattle area, and I'm a pretty big basketball fan, but also a football fan. So I'm excited to be here and talk about what's going on.
No, it's awesome to have you guys. It's been a few weeks since we've recorded one of these, but we're back on schedule, hopefully. A lot going on in the sports world. We're going to kick it off, though, with the mind-boggling decision that went down in the NFC Championship game this past Sunday, with the Packers electing to kick a field goal with 2 minutes and 50 seconds left, down 8, and they ended up losing. I'm not going to say ultimately because of that, but they had all the momentum in the world, decided to kick a field goal, take that ball out of quite possibly the most talented quarterback to ever play the position in the National Football League. And it seems like tensions are high in Green Bay right now.
Yeah, so I want to take a different route because I think I see a lot of people are coming at LaFleur for making a decision. And personally, I would have made it because in that situation, you're in the NFC Championship game, you do have to get 8 points. So there's no guarantee that that would be the case, if you don't go for the touchdown in the situation. While everyone's coming at LaFleur, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers because at the end of the day, he had a clear lane to go into the end zone. He didn't take that clear lane. And I feel like there's a lot of people are not talking about that enough because at the end of the day, Rodgers was the one who got the ball taken out of his hands. So is there blame to go around? Absolutely. But let's not absolve Aaron Rodgers. He had a wonderful game. He did more than enough to win, but that play thrown it to receivers who haven't done anything basically all day except for Valdez-Scantling. Trust your legs, dude. I'm a Bears fan. I've seen you run. You can run. Like, take the points at that point.
Yeah, just kind of going off of that too, like spot on. I feel the exact same. You take the 3 points there, you're still going to need to stop Brady and company when they get the ball. If you don't, let's say Aaron Rodgers takes off, because I agree. I felt like he could at least made it close if he wasn't able to dive in the end zone. He was right there, and there was a pocket for him, a lane for him to go, dive in the end zone. If he didn't feel like taking a hit, it could have been 4th and inches. Maybe LaFleur would have changed his mind, would have thought about something else. But at least if you don't get it, if you don't take the 3 points and you're stopped on 4th and goal, you got to stop like their game plan, Tampa's game plan now when they come out on offense, they're not going to be throwing it like they were because they're backed up in the end zone. So it changes the entire game plan completely. And the rest of we're letting them play the entire time. And of course, like, all your Green Bay fans, I probably would have been mad too. They would call that holding or that pass interference call on that last play when there was some questionable no calls throughout the entire game. But I'm not really blaming LaFleur here because I mean, in a game like that, you take the points, you take the 3, or if you don't take it, regardless, Tampa Bay gets the ball back, and you still need to make a stop. So they had the opportunity. It looks bad because they weren't able to stop Tampa. So that's the only reason we're having this conversation now.
Yeah, I think you got to go for it there. It's Rodgers. I definitely agree with both of you that Rodgers should have ran. He did have a clear lane to get to the end zone, but if he didn't make the end zone, he would have got tackled at the 1 or 2. But I think just the situation and where you were in the field, you have to go for it. Worst case scenario, you go for it at 4th and 8. They get the ball on the 8-yard line instead of the 25 if they touch back and, force them to punt. You got to go down and you'd be down by 5. You got to score a touchdown. If not, you kick a field goal. I would have gone for it. Either way, like the only reason we're talking about this, they didn't win, but going back to that pass interference, it was definitely a pass interference. I understand the frustration because they're letting them play the whole game and they're letting those type of calls slide the whole game. But even if they wouldn't have called it, we would have been yelling at them too. But yeah, I think Rodgers definitely should have ran the ball, but the frustration for the LaFleur is justified.
Well, I understand you guys bringing up the officiating. I mean, inconsistent officiating is just something that you have to come to expect with the NFL. It's a sad reality that it's football at its highest level, and every week you never know what you're going to get out there from the officials. However, I think that based on the press conference after the game with Aaron Rodgers saying that it wasn't his decision to kick the field goal there, I think Aaron Rodgers is definitely on the level of Tom Brady, where Tom Brady wants to go for it on fourth down, which you saw the Bucs do earlier in that game. You're going to bring the offense back out there on the field and go for it on fourth down. And Matt LaFleur definitely ruffled some feathers with his quarterback with that decision. Do I think they could? Do I think they would have gotten in for 6? Who knows? No one knows. Obviously, it's all hypothetical at this point. But I still think that you give the most talented, physically talented quarterback to ever play in the NFL an opportunity to go out there and win you that football game at home, especially with all the momentum there. And I'm also just going to say, based on that press conference, I don't think the Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay rumors are true at all. I really don't. I think that's just Rodgers trying to say he's upset with the decision. And in all reality, he needs more help on offense for Green Bay. I don't want to see that as a Bear fan. But, I mean, Aaron Jones' contract is up. Packers are most likely going to be bringing him back. And then besides Devontae Adams, usually he's thrown to Allen Lazard and Valdez-Scantling, who can't usually catch a ball. He looked phenomenal this past Sunday. But Rodgers needs help on that offense still. He can't do it. He can't do it all. And when he inevitably leaves, and I think it's 3 years, his contract's up, 2 or 3 years, and they have Jordan Love when they have Jordan Love take over, hypothetically, that's what they want to do. He can't be thrown to nobody like this if they want to be successful.
It feels like it's the very first year we have seen Rodgers take a stand, although it was very, very just subtle. He didn't really just go straight for the jugular, say, hey, we need more help. I think just him saying, like, hey, I got to go home and clear my mind, that was like, damn, this is finally it. Like, he knows he's 37 years old and he's dealt with the same nonsense from the Packers front office for how many years now? So I think now it's like, okay, if they want to play hardball with me, I could play even harder because he's the life and blood of that organization. If he's not on the team, that team is picking in the top 10. And I don't think Packers understand how good they have it because they've been spoiled with his presence since 2008, because that's when he first started to play. So now they're feeling pressure, and I don't blame Rodgers for playing, with their pockets a little bit, because now it's like, all right, if you don't get it together, then I'm gonna play somewhere else and probably win a championship as well.
Yeah, and adding to that too, you have all the leverage, like as Aaron Rodgers. Like, you've been there, you're the star guy. We don't know who won the MVP yet, right? Is most likely Aaron Rodgers. Is it Aaron Rodgers?
Most likely.
Yeah, most likely Aaron Rodgers. So that's your number one guy. And the Packers have been on the doorstep the last couple of years, other than like 2 years ago when the Saints were there. But now all the Packers are known for with Aaron Rodgers is you're just the team that some other NFC team's going to beat to go to the Super Bowl. Yep. You're just that placeholder in there. It's like these other teams are like, oh, we're going to be playing the Packers. That's a win, because they're not winning. They're not getting it done there. And so, like you were saying, I don't know if I'm really buying the Aaron Rodgers is going to walk. He's there until 2024, and he's making 34 million a year. So he does need the help there. But at the same time, he's watching, man, Tom Brady, he's going on to his 10th Super Bowl, and I have got one, and I'm 1-4 in NFC title games. Something's got to give, right? And there's other places around the league that might look really good to you right now if you're a veteran quarterback who's been stuck on a struggling team. And I won't mention that team or like the other teams too, but it's kind of picking up some noise too, like around the NFL with all these other quarterbacks wanting to, make some noise, go somewhere else. You see it with Deshaun Watson too. So there's definitely going to be some interesting things coming up here in the offseason for the QB rooms around the league.
Mm-hmm.
No, for sure. So moving on to another thing that has ruffled some feathers on the internet this past week. MLB Hall of Fame voting has concluded this year, and with 14 writers submitting no ballots, there was no one elected to the 2021 MLB Hall of Fame class, and people continue to wonder why Major League Baseball fails to bring in a younger younger fan base. I'm not saying that that the MLB Hall of Fame voting is the main reason, but they keep shooting themselves in the foot. There's people who have defined an era of baseball and they are struggling to get in. Do I think that Barry Bonds is right for cheating? No, but I can tell you him, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa saved Major League Baseball and defined an entire era of baseball. And if you just want to keep that out of the history books, that's on you. Shame on you. I'm not saying that it's right what they did, but even if you take away the alleged steroid years of Barry Bonds, that's a Hall of Fame career. I'm amazed that no one has taken that path yet.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up because I was going to go there. I was going to go to Kurt Schilling route because I have stuff to say about him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a misconception about steroids. Not fully, but in a sense. If, like you said, Barry Bonds had a Hall of Fame career before he started taking steroids, allegedly, around alleged time. I don't think he used it to get better. He didn't need to get better. He just want to get healthy because normally you have players that would take steroids to stay healthy and have the longevity to play more and more and more. Now, like you said, if you want to erase the history books of probably the greatest player to ever play baseball, go right ahead. But if you look back, like it's one of those things where you had to be there to witness how great he actually was. And those who actually were there to watch it, people like myself and many others that's older than me, it's like, damn, how can you keep that guy who just probably made baseball the most coolest thing in the world, other than guys like Manny or A-Rod or Cal Ripken, all these other guys? How do you keep him out of the Hall of Fame? Now, Roger Clemens, you can understand because he was just straight up lying about it to everyone's faces. Like that's like you can't forgive that. But Barry Bonds, on the other hand, he may have denied it. But if we're going to sit here and say he need to get better by taking steroids, I think that's foolish for people to think that. And I think that's just people who just are so holding on to the integrity of the game that's going to say, oh, well, he had to cheat. He didn't have to cheat. He didn't want to cheat. He wanted to get healthy. That's just my theory.
So I do agree with you that and the fact that I think that Barry Bonds was doing it to get healthy. But the problem I think that people tend to have, if you let in that first alleged steroid user, that opens Pandora's box, and they're going to think that the Hall of Fame is tarnished. Because if you're letting in Bonds, you're letting in Clemens, you're going to let in McGwire, you're going to let in Sosa, you're letting in Manny Ramirez, A-Rod's going to get in. I mean, and countless other people. But the problem is that defined an entire generation of baseball. You can't just forget about it. That is my biggest argument in this whole thing. And baseball writers across America just having a giant stick up their ass constantly, thinking that they're better than everyone because they have some moral high ground. That's my biggest gripe with this whole process.
I agree with pretty much everything both you two have already said. I just want to mention Edgar Martinez, Seattle Mariners fan, got in to 2019 now, I believe. 68 career WAR. Great. We're really happy for him. Barry Bonds, his career WAR, pulling it up. 162. So, yeah. Roger Clemens, 139. And they did cheat. They did do steroids. I understand if people say you cheated. I don't want to vote you in. I don't want to vote everybody in if I let you in. Okay, I understand that. But he won an MVP before he had any conversation of steroids. He was winning Gold Gloves, was 300 hitter, 30 home runs. He was a very, very good player. And I believe steroids just maximize your abilities. Like if you're a 330 home run hitter, okay, if you hit 300 with 30 home runs and you take steroids, where are you going to hit 315 with 40 home runs, right? Like you don't see 240 hitters all of a sudden hit 300 with steroids, right? They might hit 260. And you got to think about too, back in that day, there's so many players were using them, but just with Bonds and Clemens and Schilling too, but for a different reason. People have a bad taste in their mouth, and I totally get it. But in terms of individual baseball players, you got to let them in. And Schilling's different because it's a different type of stuff that has people have bad taste in their mouth, and we look at it. But just in terms of a baseball player, I believe you should be in.
Now, because I know we have to get set in here, but I do want to say about Schilling. Now, we know there's a lot of bad players that's on the Hall of Fame. Most notable is Ty Cobb. Everybody knows he was a piece of shit human being. But it's one of those things where, dude, prove you're a bad person before after you get in, not before. Because at the end of the day, you are going to ruffle some feathers from people, especially with MLB, who already has a problem with representation. So if you let him in the Hall of Fame, along with the stuff that he says, and only God knows that he's so crazy, he might make his Hall of Fame speech political for all we know. You have to be careful with what you do with him. Now, granted, we just made the point about Barry Bonds. You can't tell the story about baseball if and not include Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and all the other guys from the 90s. And you could probably say the same thing about Schilling from the 2001 World Series, from the 2004 bullshit bloody sock nonsense. It includes, it's in the story of baseball. And I get it, but at the same time, what message are you sending if you're going to induct a bigoted clown into your Hall of Fame that you say is so sacred that you didn't induct anybody this year, and this isn't the first time either? You know, it's a battle, but you also had to pick which side are you going to lean on.
Yeah, and we kind of we've seen it before. So obviously, Pete Rose, he never bet against the team. He always bet. He's like, hey, I'm betting on me. We're taking us, and they won't let him in. And it's like you go to the steroids, so it's not gonna make your home runs, all the runs you hit, improve drastically. It's there because you're playing how many games a season? Over 150, 160 games plus. It's to improve your recovery time. You're playing a lot of games as a Major League Baseball player. I'm not necessarily for or against the steroid use, but I don't think it's just the perception of it. It's just the banned substances in the league. You can dig into it all you want, and I was even finding some stuff online too about some of the controversial statements that he was making, the tweets and stuff. Kurt Schilling specifically attacking the transgender reporters, all that other stuff, and expressing supports for the Capitol riots. And I won't get into all the political stuff and everything, but even Kurt Schilling had come out and said, he's like, I don't really see myself as a Hall of Famer, but it's kind of going back to setting that precedence. They juiced the league earlier. They made baseball exciting. Your Mark McGwire, your Barry Bonds, when they were hitting those runs, baseball was exciting to watch. And I completely agree with you, Ben. When you're growing up, baseball can be a tough sport to get into because it's a lot slower than the other ones. I like baseball. I'm an Indians fan. They just got rid of Lindor. I don't know if I'm an Indians fan anymore. So it's man, it's not exciting up there right now because the owners seem so cheap at times. And it's this is your guy. You have Lindor, and it's where do you go from here? So trying to grow that younger generation fan base into baseball. I mean, I'll sit and watch all the sports, but when you're taking your people into the Hall of Fame, what precedents do you want to set? Do you want to open up for people that I wouldn't say abused, but used, steroids just to improve their ability to play and to speed up their recovery time as far as health. So that's how I see it. I let them in. They made the game.
You see, I'm also of the opinion that the MLB would be a lot more fun if they just didn't care and they let their baseball players juice themselves up to the eyeballs all the time. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's the solution whatsoever, but with a league that struggles in that 18 to 35 demographic so heavily, they need to do something to change the game. And I don't know what it's going to be, but with young, exciting players like Lindor, like Tim Anderson, like Fernando Tatis, market the shit out of those guys. The game, it's right there in front of you. Your players have charisma. They're talented. Fans love it. But Major League Baseball won't even let you share a clip of them on Twitter without being cease and desist. They continually shoot themselves in the foot. And I think the Hall of Fame process, the voting should be changed. I don't think we should be leaving it up to writers. I honestly think it should be left up to the Veterans Committee solely, and I think that could solve all the issues. But my favorite thing is I can't wait to see if people just forget about David Ortiz and his steroid use, and they vote him in first ballot next year. That's what I'm waiting to see, because I feel like David Ortiz might be the person who changes it for all these steroid users.
And you mentioned David Ortiz. A-Rod's kind of the last few years being with J-Lo's had a little bit of a public image change. I wonder how when he's able to be voted into the Hall of Fame, I wonder how that goes for him.
You took the words right out of my mouth. And it's funny because I had a friend bring this up and saying that it's not a coincidence that he's trying to change his public perception by being one of the finest women on the planet, but also being a great MLB analyst and being just everywhere. He's everywhere, and he's not being that jerk off that he was with the Yankees. He's actually, being a good dude and minding his own business. And if that's going to be the deciding factor, he did a damn good job at it. All props to him, but they might be the ones. Granted, I would not want A-Rod or David Ortiz to be the ones. I would like it to be Barry Bonds, but what can you do? It is what it is.
And one last thing, and it just reminded me, kind of drives me up the wall a little bit. They won't let these guys in, but they're letting the Houston Astros retain their World Series championship after they were caught cheating. So that's where it starts. It's like, now okay, we're going to let them, we're still going to reward them. They're still champions and they were caught cheating in the World Series, but we're not going to let any of these guys in. Where do you go from there? Where do you go? The MLB, from top down, it's kind of contradicting what they're trying to set. So I don't know what your guys' opinions are, views on that, but I think it's a little silly. They're still able to retain that, but that's just me.
Piece of metal or needle? Which one? Pick.
Yeah.
Amen to that. It's frustrating being a baseball fan, no doubt about it. And another thing that tends to be incredibly frustrating is being a professional wrestling fan. As you know, Brandon, Royal Rumble coming this Sunday. In my opinion, the best show WWE does all year. You never know what's going to happen. Absolutely. I love watching the Rumble. You can have fun even if you're not a wrestling fan watching it. I know that my roommates down here at school, I'm the only one who's watching wrestling, but they're all excited to watch it on Sunday. I don't know, Jacob, Seth, how much you're into wrestling at all.
So growing up, I watched it. And then when I got into high school, it kind of stopped. And then college, my roommate was pretty big into it. And then he got frustrating with WWE's writing and just the way some of the stuff's worked out. So we kind of stopped watching it probably 2 years ago, but I'll still pay attention to it. Like I kind of have an idea what's going on.
I follow, and I don't even say follow lightly UFC a little bit more if like the heavier cards are playing, but WWE to me, like that wrestling, where's Royal Rumble this year? Where's it being hosted?
They're doing it from their performance center, I believe, just down in Tampa. And,
okay.
Or are they doing it from Raymond James?
The Tropicana.
You're right. I forgot they moved to Tropicana now. Yep. They're doing it from Tropicana, still with no fans. So it's going to be very interesting because this is the first time in I don't know how many years where I genuinely have no idea what to expect with the Rumble match. Obviously, they have a solid card built around it, but going into the Rumble match, I think they only have about 10 to 12 names announced right now. I mean, names that people are familiar with. Edge coming back, he announced that because there's no way he was going to top the return from last year. But as of right now, I'm just afraid that they're going to go the route of having Goldberg beat Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship and then enter the Royal Rumble to try and face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania to try and unify the titles. That's what I'm worried about.
Oh, shit.
But what I actually think is going to happen, I'm expecting to see Brock Lesnar surprise return and win the Rumble and challenge McIntyre for a rematch at WrestleMania.
Wow. Damn, how do I follow that? Because so I don't know if you're a wrestling fan and you watch this and you don't pay attention to dirt sheets for reasons of wanting to be surprised. I apologize for this ahead of time, but they have a writer described it as a scary ending to the Men's Royal Rumble. Now, this can be scary in terms of backlash or Bray Wyatt doing some absolute witchcraft to just eliminate everybody just by powers. So I don't know which one it's going to be, I do expect Bray to be back in the Royal Rumble. And if I had to pick from by brand, I would say Bray will win it from Raw, although I was kind of leaning Edge like beginning of the week. But it's either gotta be Bray. But I think on SmackDown, I think like if I'm picking a concrete winner of like to between brands and stuff like that, I have Daniel Bryan winning Royal Rumble, and now I think that would be like poetic justice for the fact that he had so many opportunities and times where he should have won the Rumble, but he didn't. I think program with Roman will be awesome. I will love to see it. And on the women's side, I think right now, Alexa and Bianca are just on a collision course to the favorites of winning the Royal Rumble. And my now the question just really lies like who's going to be Universal? Who's going to not Universal? Who's going to be WWE champion after this event? Because while everyone's saying, "Oh, Goldberg's going to win," I think Drew's going to win. I think Drew's gonna win, but the scariest part is Goldberg entering the Royal Rumble and saying, "Nah, screw this. I'm gonna just go after Roman instead."
That is what concerns me. I do deep down think McIntyre will win, will retain, and head into WrestleMania as the champion. But another scenario that I keep playing in the back of my head is Drew wins, or Drew doesn't win. The Miz cashes in the Money in the Bank during the match, pins McIntyre, and that's what leads Goldberg to taking someone out from the Rumble and entering the Rumble, winning. And, that's what we need, a 54-year-old Bill Goldberg who's going to wrestle a 5-minute match at the biggest show of the year. But a dark horse that I would love to see based on the push he's kind of been getting right now, just out of pure wrestling ability alone, would be Cesaro. Picked up that big win over Daniel Bryan. I don't ever see it happening. Vince McMahon obviously does not believe in him, but that is something that, he's as talented as anyone in between the ropes on the entire roster.
If you talk about somebody who could just go and just put on a match of the night every single night, it's Cesaro. But I do want to touch on something about McIntyre and Goldberg and the mistake that WWE has been making for the past couple of years. So you're gonna build up Drew all this time, beat Brock in a matter of 5 minutes, and then you're gonna have the same thing happen while Drew has been practically unbeatable the whole year. You're gonna have him get squashed by Goldberg, where you have Goldberg as a guy in it's either one or two things. He's either gonna get squashed or he's gonna squash somebody. It can't be both. You can't have someone who's been carrying your company and hasn't lost for only like a couple of times in the year. You cannot have him lose in a squash. And listen, no one wants to see Goldberg in a 10, 15 minute, slugfest, because he would get tired. The man sweats as he walks down to the ring already. We don't need to see it. But they can't keep making the same mistake because it just doesn't make sense from a booking standpoint. You book it someone that doesn't lose and he loses within 5 minutes. Please make it make sense. If you're going to have McIntyre lose, make it make sense.
Amen to that. I really don't know what to expect for the rest of the card other than Roman Reigns beating the absolute piss out of Kevin Owens in that last man standing match. But as excited as I've been for the Rumble, and I don't know how long, just because of how uncertain, like I mentioned, there's off the top of my head, I think 5 to 6 guys right now who can feasibly win it, and I would not be upset. And that makes me happy. I realistically see scenarios where Keith Lee can win and he challenges Roman Reigns because he hasn't been able to beat Drew McIntyre, so he wants to go after Reigns' title and go play back to that Survivor Series fist bump from a few years ago. I could see Big E winning if he drops the Intercontinental title going after Roman. I can see Nakamura winning his second Rumble. He's getting that seemingly the babyface turn. Has the old entrance music back. Daniel Bryan, like you mentioned. Edge. I think Edge can very well win. But what scares me with Edge winning is that I think Randy Orton then takes the title off of McIntyre, and then they build towards Orton versus Edge. Orton the transitional champion. Edge has one last run with the belt and then rides off into the sunset.
So one thing that I was thinking about before I was preparing for the show, when I was thinking, should I say Edge or should I say Bray Wyatt? Now, I think that from a booking standpoint, now granted, me and WWE's logic is totally different because I have logic they don't, but that's a different discussion for another day. But I truly believe that if they was going to go the route of Randy Orton and Edge, I don't think Randy Orton would have lost the title in the first place. So that's why I'm a little iffy about it because they're going to fight each other down the line. They're going to fight each other. It's just a matter of when. Now, one thing I do find interesting that if Goldberg wins the championship, I do believe there is a opening for Bray to get his revenge on Goldberg for taking the championship off of him. I think I will be into that storyline because all I know is Goldberg will have the absolute piss beat out of him. So I'm cool with that. So that's what makes this Royal Rumble so exciting because you just don't know from both sides, men and women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned Bray Wyatt, The Fiend. Adam wanted me to mention that that's his prediction. He thinks that The Fiend wins the Rumble in some fluky way, which I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that scary ending, like you mentioned, very well could see them go in that weird supernatural route, which, I mean, if WWE really does go crazy with it, like say they have Alexa Bliss enter number 30 in the men's Rumble match as with The Fiend possessing her. I mean, just say, I mean, this sounds like it's straight out of a fucking horror movie that would just be horrible. I'll give props to WWE for trying to do something different and showing some balls for once. Yeah. But who knows? I also wouldn't be surprised to see John Cena come back. I read that he's supposed to be at WrestleMania 37, and I would not be upset about that. He's my all-time favorite. I think he's the greatest of all time.
Hey, man, well, that's crazy. But anyways, I'm not going to judge you. But I will say, I think that a couple of years ago, we were robbed of a classic on a big stage with John Cena and Roman Reigns. I don't know if you remember the promos from that, but I mean, John Cena absolutely killed that man.
And then they had just a stinker of a match. I think it was Backlash or something like that. It was, yeah.
And it disappointed me because I'm like, you know something? This needs to be on a bigger stage for a championship. If John Cena is the man that wins the Royal Rumble, and this is coming from a former John Cena hater, I've come around on him. If he wins the Royal Rumble, I will be genuinely ecstatic because we were robbed of a great Roman Reigns John Cena match, and I do think the stage it was on made it not so watchable or enjoyable. It needs to be on a bigger stage, and what better that the guy who's on the top of the company right now, the guy who was on the top of the company, and the former wants to get his record-breaking championship. You can't write it any better than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it sounds like they need us in the writer's room based on this. I'm sure none of this will end up happening, but next week we'll either talk about how happy we are with their decisions they made or how pissed off we are. That's just how it goes as a wrestling fan. You can never be happy. Yep. But on that note, just want to say thank you if you're still listening at this point. Thank you for tuning into the show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube at The Goonery. We'll see you next week.